Greetings and salutations. John Boy, the U.S. Piper, with you. Pardon me just a minute. Smoky. Smoking a little Brigham. What is it? 03S, System 03S. It's their cheapest entry level briar that they offer in a basic billiard. And it's a surprisingly decent pipe. It has the rock maple inserts, which let me round one up for you. I'm kind of undecided on that part of it, but it's a neat system. You basically have just a pressed on metal cap, a maple piece of maple with a hole, 3.5 millimeter hole through the middle of it, and that kind of sits, well, it actually sits oriented this way, kind of in the shank and through much of the stem, and it just gives it something that can soak up moisture and presumably some tars and stuff. They say you can smoke them 20 or 30 times before changing. I don't know. From the color change I've seen, and I've been smoking Burleys because I've been breaking the pipe in, it seems more accelerated than that, and I don't know. I mean, you get some weird stuff sometimes breaking in a pipe. There was a certain flavor I wasn't crazy about, and I started thinking, I went through several of the inserts, and if I put a fresh insert in, it would be fine for a bowl, and then I would notice kind of a funny taste again. And it may have been, the bowl coating or the break-in. Sometimes there's finish under the bowl coating. It was probably some of all of those. Nonetheless, it was beginning to break in. Man, that's smoky. It was beginning to break in really well, and getting some nice starter cake going, and feel like it was pretty well sealed. And I decided, you know what? I know some people do what I do with the Savinellis, which is pull the filter out and just smoke the thing wide open. So I decided to try that, and all day I've been smoking this pipe, 3 or 4 bowls now. This is the 3rd or 4th bowl. Sans insert, and it's smoking very well. It's kind of a fine line rustication. Maybe you can see that. It almost comes across like a blast, but it's not. It's a real dark, kind of a grayish brown finish. Got a little rubber bit on it, but it's their little logo, and you can kind of see with the overall in that one smooth spot. But I really like it. It's got some good traction without being over the top, and they're not expensive pipes. It's like a $41 pipe. They had a deal going. You got a pouch of you got 2 pouches of pipe cleaners and 8-piece box of the extra inserts for free if you bought any of their pipes. Well, I looked just to see what the entry level was because I had read a few things about the rock maple inserts in their pipes. They're a Canadian company originally. These are Italian briars now. They farm them out. The original ones had kind of a aluminum extension that once you get past the basic tenon, but the only other thing that used that size tubing was some aircraft manufacturing that dropped that size of tubing. So the manufacturer that made the tubing, aluminum tubing, stopped making it. So it's basically some type of high temperature plastic now. And They may not be as durable as the original, but they guarantee them. So if you ever break one, they'll send you a new stem for it. And, so I guess that's fair enough. Honestly, it's, the way it's made, you'd have to do something accidental to it while it was apart, probably, to break it meaningfully. Because the extension just sleeves the shank, it just seals, around the insert. And that little piece of metal kind of almost butts up against the end of the drilling there. So effectively, the insert becomes your 3.5 millimeter draw going into the actual draw. So when you remove it, it's more like a probably not quite as large as a 6 millimeter without a filter in it. But the thing I'm noticing is it smokes very dry even without the insert. It's a good smoking pipe. Good smoking pipe. I've just been smoking Old Joe Krantz, which is what I have in it now, or like Haunted Bookshop in it primarily. I may have smoked some Solani aged Burley Flake in it. I don't recall for sure. But it's a nice classic billiard shape. It's kind of got that tapered stem going. Just a real nice, it's a vulcanite stem. Feels good in hand, and it's light enough to clench well without being a small pipe. It's a nice, I think it's like I can't remember exactly the depth on it, but it seems like it's around roughly 1.3, 1.5 by like 0.8, 0.82, somewhere like that. So it's a pretty standard size chamber. And I think it specs out around 1.6 ounces, but it feels lighter than that. It feels lighter than that, especially sans the insert in the little metal, piece on the end. That may shave a tenth or two of an ounce off. It feels like about a 1.5 ounce pipe to me, and it's nice. It's Italian, they're farmed out to an Italian maker. The draw is buried in the bottom of the bowl. I mean, it's not just at the bottom of the bowl. It's kind of, it's kind of buried. You know how a lot of the Italian makers do. Sometimes they're in between those things a little bit here and there. But this one is, it's a nice. It's definitely in the bottom. It kind of comes in and runs to about the middle of the bowl, and basically, if you picture the drill bit coming in and you expose the top third of it, that's the open draw going into the bottom of the bowl. So it's very recessed. I have a Peterson 307 I have a 106 Irish made Army mount that's very much like that, and it smokes really good too. So I'm not saying that's necessarily a thing all pipes should have, but it doesn't seem to hurt anything, because this one's been a good dry smoker, and that immediately impressed me about the inserts. But what I've been even more impressed by is without the inserts, it's just a good smoking pipe. Good knockabout pipe without spending a lot of money. It's big enough for a good smoke. Small enough that, you could pack half a bowl and probably have a good 25-minute, smoke out of it. but it smokes well. It smokes very well for a $40 pipe. I don't know when that deal runs through on smoking pipes, the Brigham deal. But even without the deal, I mean, the deal made it kind of a no-brainer because I didn't want to have to buy a pipe and then buy, and they're not terribly expensive. I think it's $4 or $5 for another 8-pack of the inserts, but between the pipe cleaners, which, you can always use more, and mostly it was just getting the free inserts. I thought, if I'm ever going to try that system out, because I've been intrigued by it, why not? So originally a big Canadian company. They were kind of like the Dr. Grabo of Canada, I guess you could say. Or Medico or something like that, but without the paper filter, they had come up with that was their answer for allegedly getting rid of tongue bite, which I don't really smoke aromatics, so the very occasional crossover, every once in a blue moon, I try one again. But there's only a few that I ever smoke, and I smoke them very rarely. It's just not my thing. So I can't really speak to whether or not it helps with that. My overall feeling is, if you're a person that wants to smoke a filtered pipe, and it's really not a filter, it's an insert. It's nice in that it passes a pipe cleaner, which, the balsa system doesn't do. It doesn't monkey with your draw because it's still got a 3.5 mil draw throughout. So honestly, it's the most filter you could really put in a pipe, and it doesn't seem to monkey too much with the mouthfeel of the tobacco you're smoking. Maybe just a hair. And I'm not sure on that if it kind of builds a weird tarry flavor after a bowl or two through it. I mean, they say you can run them 10, 20, 30 smokes. I've never run one past like 3 bowls because, one, I wanted to see what it looked like, and to my surprise, it was kind of matching the picture they show after 10 or 20. So, however, it was damp when I looked at it. So dry, it looks like it might be a little lighter. I mean, not damp to the touch, but I'm sure it had moisture in it. I just smoked through it, so this has been my experience level with Brigham pipes so far, just this one entry level. I read some comments that some of the bent models, maybe some things in the airway, don't line up as great as you'd want, and that was, I think, mostly on the entry level pipes, if I remember right. It may have not just been the entry-level pipes. But that led me to believe if I'm in the entry-level line that a billiard is probably the best way to, if you're going to try to judge the system, that they have with the rock maple, that probably a straight billiard was the way to go. And I've never been a straight billiard guy much, although I do own a few that I like. I've been on a little bit more of a kick of that lately. I've gotten a few Petersons. I've got a few nice older vintage Grabos that are smaller ones. And I've got a couple nice bulldogs, and I do have a few straight pipes I like, and some of mine are very slightly bent. But it's been a really good smoker. I'll tell you, if you didn't care anything about the rock maple, yes, it looks weird when you see the long extension. But honestly, you could try the maple insert, and if you don't like it, pull it out and smoke it open. And it's still a dang fine smoking billiard for the money, for basket pipe money. And some people have kind of kind of talk smack about this rustication, but I like it. It's something that I don't think is going to show a lot of wear. Or I'm sure it's not expensive to do, and it is a sitter. I don't know if you can see that, but it does sit reasonably. I mean, on a flat surface anyway, on a tabletop or whatever, it'll sit in the mouthpiece. Because it's tapered, it will be, even with a cover, it will be just off the surface, so it's not going to be on the counter as far as your mouthpiece, even with the rubber bit cover. So if you're wanting to explore the billiard world a little without breaking the bank, there's X amount of choices out there, and this is a fairly interesting one. Most of like the entry level 7Ls, meaning the Rossi line, you're still looking at $60. So, heck, that's a third cheaper. So you're pretty much like, and even some of the new Graybos are running, around there or within $5 or $6 of it. So, and they're usually wet smokers in my opinion, the new ones, the drilling is not the best in the modern Graybo world, unless you get lucky, and they tend to be drilled high off the bottom, and I don't care for that. So to have an Italian briar for $40, where it's definitely sunk into the bottom there. It's a dry smoker, open or with the insert. It's got a very decent draw either way. I think I like the draw just a hair more open. It doesn't change drastically. But it's a little nicer without the insert. And like I said, the insert does pass a pipe cleaner. So I think maybe one time I got a slight gurgle, and I did put a pipe cleaner down it a few times just to see if there was anything to be had. And, it passed just fine. But, yeah, it seems to smoke just fine without it. So that's probably how I'll continue to smoke this one. I'll try the inserts again just to see, now that I'm really getting towards some reliable broken in, the flavor has really arrived with this pipe now. I feel like any oddities have pretty much tapered out to almost gone completely, and enough that I don't notice them. And that could be the coating. It could be a little finish under the coating. Who knows? But for the price class, I mean, you could spend $100 and still be going through that on a Peterson. So, definitely a nice budget-friendly pipe, though. With a nice classical look to it. So, you want something kind of low-key, understated. I think it's pretty sharp. And they have a few other shapes. Like I said, I don't know how those smoke. They may not be as dry as the straight pipe, or they may be. They've got a bent Dublin for the same money that looks really nice and has the same, finish and everything. And it's a nice pipe for that kind of money too. I figured the billiard was the safest bet, and that was something I wouldn't mind. Both of my Petersons are on the larger side. I have the 106 Army mount, Irish made, and then I have a 107 Donegal Rocky, which is, they're both pretty chubby as billiards go, which I like a big beefy. I like a little wood around the chamber. I've been enjoying the Army mount as well on the 106. The only Army mount I've ever had have been my 2 Estate 307s, and I'm just not that big a fan of that, as it turns out. I love the way they look. I love the way they feel, other than the P-lip and the thicker stem. I'm more of a saddle bit guy. But this is definitely a little lighter than either of those two billiards are. Has not quite as much capacity, but still within reasonably in the neighborhood. It's the smaller house on the block between those three. And I have a couple of basket billiards, one with a saddle stem. Unfortunately, the one with the saddle stem, it's a beautiful looking piece of briar. I mean, you wouldn't believe it's a basket pipe. But the geometry internally is just not that great, and it's a very wet smoker. I looked at it, and there may be something I can do that will help that a little bit, but um, I didn't give much for it. But and I picked up another one around Christmas that's a HIS Italian export cheap billiard, and it's actually not a bad smoking pipe. It's a little wet smoking. It's not terrible till you get to like that bottom quarter. Sorry, had a brief interruption. Doggus interruptus. Jojo Piper. You know, he just mentioned that old Joe Krantz so many times. It's one of those blends I've been meaning to try forever, and I just never think about it. And he finally mentioned it so many times that I'm like, by God, I'm going to get some of that and try it. Because we both like Haunted Bookshop. And I love it. It's got red Virginias in there, which I love. It's got, to me, a little bit smoother Perique and definitely more. But it seems a little less peppery than the little bit that you find in the Haunted Bookshop. It is lovely. Well, been kind of a long time no see thing. I've got another video that I've been meaning to upload for like 2 or 3 weeks now. So maybe I'll get this and that one up tonight. My upload speed has just sucked here lately, and I'm doing a few things out here in the Liberty Lounge Bar, Grill, and Casino, which is funny because it's not really any of those things other than the lounge part, but I've got a brand new 8,000 BTU LG air conditioner to put in either tomorrow or Monday. I've got to cut a hole in the wall, and I've got a through the wall box, heavy gauge through the wall mounting box. I've got to get, build a little header frame around and get it situated just right and in. Then I'll be able to pop that bad boy in and have dedicated air conditioning out here, which it needs and has needed for a few years because it's Alabama. And there's just 2 or 3 months of the year. It's just, unless you're out here early in the morning or in the evening, it's tough to enjoy out here. It's very well insulated. It's a fully finished out garage with nice popcorn ceiling and, half wall paneling and sheetrock, and it's a nice little man cave. It's just it needs that, and it holds temperature pretty well. It's never quite as hot as it is outside, but this will definitely solve that. I don't think it'll have to run terribly hard to keep this very comfortably, because I heat the entire place with a little tower ceramic heater in the winter, and it doesn't have to run unreasonably hard to keep this place very comfortable in the winter. It's, of course, got high ceilings, so I don't think... it's probably only like 12 by 18, if that. So it may not even be that. So I think 8,000 BTUs is good for like 300 plus square feet, and this is considerably less than that. It's probably in the between 225, somewhere in that neighborhood, if I had to guess. I did the math, but I don't remember off the top of my head. So I figure there's that, along with the fact that it is insulated and holds pretty well. It's got one brick wall. That's the exterior wall of the house it's built against. It was an add-on, so, and it's on a slab, so you know how it is. If you get those things to the temperature you want them to be at, they tend to want to stay that temperature, so that always helps. So I won't keep you well. Hope this finds everybody well. It's a different cast of crazy going on, but we're kind of in the same, it's about the same. There's different flavors of crazy going on right now. Some of them are carryover, still the same, tapering off. Whole new boatload of crazy has showed up since then. Not going to get into the drama because there's enough of that crap out there. I just want everybody to be all right. and make smart decisions and rational decisions. And enough said. There is nothing new under the sun, There are no new problems in society, in the society of man. There's just ultimately how we choose to deal with them. It comes down to who we choose to be every day. And so with that in mind, I hope everybody's making good decisions and thinking about their fellow man, as well as them and theirs, because we all got to live together. And hopefully in relative peace. And as we've seen in the last several months, bad things happen and dire situations occur, but nothing that happens absolves us of doing the right thing. I mean, we're either our brother's keeper or we're not, and we are, whether we like it or not. Like I always say, as many times I've said, so-and-so's my brother and I love him, but, sometimes you want to smack your brother, and sometimes your brother wants to smack you, but you're still family. So, think about it. In the larger scheme of things, we're all God's children, and I know we don't all have the same outlook on that, but I feel like the majority of us are raised to understand that in one capacity or another, that, we're all made of the same stuff. Good, bad, and ugly. And that's what comes out when we're brought to a test on something, is you're going to see the best of humanity and the worst of humanity illustrated. Now, the worst of humanity tends to get more playtime. It sells. Fear sells. But you got to look for the good too. Because the truth of the matter is, there's more of that than there is the other. The average person is still a good, decent human being. It may not look like that on the news. And Lord knows that the people that are just bad examples are certainly make their presence known in life. But you can't let that change the way you look at everybody else. no matter what direction you're looking from. So that's as close as getting into that issue as I'm going to get, because it's really not a political issue to me. I think there are bigger fish to fry surrounding everything that's going on. You can argue the details of it and how to handle it and all that, and people will have varying opinions, and they'll be passionate about them, and that's fine. You should be passionate about your beliefs, but it's a saying I like to say quite a bit, because it's pretty true in life, and you'll find it's more true the older you get. You can be right all day long, but you don't need to be right on top of the next guy. And it's good to make allowances for people that you feel are completely wrong, because you know what? Sooner or later, it's going to be you. It has been, and it will be again. I know we're all right and we all know everything till we're 25, but, by the time you're 35, I feel like you start questioning if you know anything. And probably by about 45, you realize you know a few things, but, it's not important. Other than the important things that you need to know, and you need to know them in here. And if you got those straight, if everybody could get honest with themselves and be a little bit more genuinely humble, not as a show, but be willing to doubt your own perspective and point of view sometimes. Be willing to question your own beliefs. At least enough to at least try to understand the other guy's view. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It's a free country. You can disagree with anybody you want. But again, it does not absolve you of your obligation to your fellow man to be a decent human being. And that's the bare minimum. That's not something to strive for. That's the minimal accepted standard of how an adult should act, how a man should act, how an adult should act. It doesn't really matter gender-wise. Because we've all required patience of others. I know I certainly did, especially before the age of 25 or 30. Whew, did I require some patience. We have a patient God. If you're a person of faith, you understand that. When you're young, it's really easy to cry out for justice. But you hit a certain age and you realize justice is a good thing to search for, to seek, and to try to implement in any way that you can. But the truth is, most of us don't really want justice. We want mercy at the end of the day, because we're going to need that a lot more. I'd rather have mercy myself, because, I know who I've been, I know who I am, and I know the regularity with which I have thoughts that don't even make me happy. And he has the misfortune of knowing all of them. So I'm going to go for mercy. And luckily there is a bottomless well of that out there for you. And I'd like to have a relationship with you. So if that's something you're interested in discussing, I'm not going to make the channel about that. I mean, I'll mention it a few times because it's part of who I am. But I'm really just pontificating on things because that's what a pipe leads you to do. I mean, it's not a prerequisite to be a person of faith to be a wonderful, caring, thoughtful individual. And oftentimes, I question if they don't do it better than we do sometimes, and that's not the way it should be. But good for them. It doesn't say much about us sometimes as the larger church. Sometimes we forget how we're supposed to act. We need more grandparents. It just seemed like the older generation had a very immediate way of getting those things across, and how they raise their children a little better maybe than what I'm seeing now walking around out there. And part of that might be I'm getting old man-itis, but not that I'm old, but I definitely ain't young anymore. But it is what it is, and you know what? We just all need to get where we need to be. This is a good smoking pipe. I'll tell you, I love me some Old Joe. Old Joe Krantz. Get you some if you haven't already. You're missing out. If you like Perique, you're going to love it. If you like Red Virginia, you're going to love it. If you love Burley, you're going to love it. If you don't like Burley, you still might like it. I mean, as long as you don't hate Burley. But if you don't like Perique, you're probably not going to be a huge fan. But I'd still get a couple ounces and try it, just on the off chance, because it's got a lot of good flavor. A lot of good flavor. I intended this to be a short video. You know how that works out for me usually. And I understand most people are going to watch for a few minutes. It's the internet. But I know there's a few folks out there that are like me, and you're probably just having a pipe, kicking back like I'm doing. And sometimes I watch the rest of y'all that tend to run a little long, as I do. Lord knows I do. And this is my evening smoke. And it has been a good one. I have smoked, in fact, I haven't smoked anything but Old Joe today. This is the fourth bowl, probably. Fourth or fifth. So that's a little bit about Brigham, from my one pipe of experience. I've had it a few weeks now. Been enjoying it. It's really getting there. It's really getting there. It hasn't been a horrible break-in either. It's still not gurgling. It sounds like there might be just a little bit of moisture. We'll sink a pipe cleaner and see. Why not? I hear a little bit of a sizzle. Yeah. Well, grab it where it's not vibrating a million times. Not a whole lot. Pulled a little moisture out. And that's, I haven't put one down it the whole time, so. Feel like we're pretty much on the bottom now, thereabouts. So I'll say goodnight to you. Hope you have a blessed Sunday and a safe and productive week. Jumbo with the U.S. Piper, wishing you a good evening.